right, welcome to Behind the Session. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the most unique athletes I've ever worked with, Mickey Gallus of Armored MMA. Let's check it out.
Fighter number one, are you ready?
As you guys know, I've trained some of the best fighters and athletes in the world. And Mickey was one of these guys that put me in a position where I had to think twice and ask, I'm sorry, what do you do? So Mickey is an Armored MMA fighter, and he has done a great job creating this new league called Armored MMA in Nashville. Now, Armored MMA is exactly what it sounds like. These guys get their night suits on. They have helmets, gear, shields, swords, axes, you name it, and they fight.
Stop fight!
All the same rules as MMA. The only difference, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mickey, if you see this video, is that once you get taken down, which you can do judo, you only get 5 to 10 seconds on the ground to do damage, and then they stand it back up. But this is one of the most unique sports and one of the most exciting things I've ever watched, and especially watching Mickey, who is the leader and the pioneer of it in the United States. I met Mickey back in 2020 in Nashville when I lived there for a little bit. He found me on Instagram and wanted to work together. He saw the work I was doing in strength and conditioning, and he wanted to work together to improve his capacity and improve his output. And getting to work with him was a very cool experience because it was like I said, one of the most unique athletes I ever got to work with. Now, in this Behind the Session, we're going to be going through a strength session that I took Mickey through a year ago when he came down to Florida when I was training at the gym in Florida. But we got a lot of work together. This was after the fact that I had moved down to Florida and I hadn't seen him in a year. I was still working with him online, but he made the trip down because he was doing some business. He made the trip down to Florida to come see me so he could get some sessions in. Now, one thing you'll see in most of my sessions is that the layout is very similar in the off season, right? There's going to be plyometrics, there's going to be strength movements or explosive movements, then there's going to be accessory work, maybe some core work, and then if we have time, conditioning, or if not, we'll do conditioning on the other days. For Mickey here, this was a basic off-camp strength training session where we covered a lot of different types of movement. We started off with basic plyometrics, your pogos, your A-skips, your hops, your jumps, things like that, just to get the body moving and primed, as you can see in the video. And for this first session, we did a max effort lower day. So what you saw here is him warming up the bench because we started with a high speed, high output bench, right? And what we're looking for here is speed, getting up to a weight that we can move fast for about 2 to 3 reps, explode, go again, explode, go again, keep the rest a little bit shorter here, and just continue to move throughout these sets. Sometimes I also like to go band work with this stuff where I'll put bands on the outside for accommodated resistance. In this case, I didn't because I really just wanted to focus on the weight, getting that speed up, and just moving the bar as fast as we could. After that, we got into one of our first movements of the day, which was the hack squat. One of the things I really like about the hack squat and why I use it is because it's an externally stabilized movement. And what that means is our body, or the machine that we're using, takes away the stability that our body needs to move a lot of weight, right? If we start to look at different movement patterns like the squat versus the hack squat, the squat is a better movement overall in regards to training the body, but the hack squat is a better movement for absolute strength of the legs because it takes away all these outside factors that might get in the way of actually producing the most force in a given movement, right? The back squat allows us to fully internally stabilize, meaning our body has to create the stability to move the weight, whereas the hack squat, the machine gives us the external stability to move that weight, which kind of takes that away so we can, in theory, produce more force and move more weight in a given movement. Now, after we hit one of those big main movements like a hack squat, we're always going to get into some accessory work. Usually you're going to be looking at something like single leg RDLs, lunging, anything that's going to help that main pattern that we're trying to work on, right? So if we're squatting and that's the goal, our accessory work either wants to help with what we struggle with in the squat. Maybe it's hip internal rotation, hip external rotation, hip flexion, right? Whatever these areas are that we need to improve, or stuff that we want to work on in general, right? It's very common you'll see a squat followed by an RDL or some type of hinge pattern where we're using the hips in a hinging or bending pattern, and then the legs in a squatting pattern. This is very common. Or it's very common to see something where we're going a bilateral squat like the hack squat into lunging or single leg RDLs or anything like that. After we got through most of the accessory work here, we got into the farmer's carries. I must have missed some of the videotaping some of the sessions here, but we got into the farmer's carry, which is a great exercise overall. Works on grip strength, works on shoulder strength, works on core strength. As we walk, it kind of challenges that gait cycle a little bit different because we're adding anywhere between, he was using around 65 pounds per hand, which is 130 pounds extra on his body as he walks. So this is a great way to kind of add some weight, get some extra steps in, and challenge the grip. Now, one of the things that's different about armored MMA as opposed to MMA, right? The use of weapons, the use of the gear, it's challenging because you can add anywhere from, Mickey was kind of explaining this to me, anywhere from like 10 to 30 pounds on your body, depending on how much armor you want to carry and how much, equipment you want to use, which can be challenging, right? And this can very much limit your movement and affect your aerobic capacity, because if you're carrying a lot of weight your body's not used to, you're going to get tired quickly, your legs are going to give out quicker. So this is something we have to account for when training for an armored MMA fight. Along with that, with having this extra weight on us, it's very important that we build resiliency, right? Because you have to imagine this is extra weight that we're carrying around during our most explosive and most dynamic times when we're putting out efforts, right? And if we look at this, imagine carrying around an extra 30 pounds everywhere you went throughout the day. That would be extra load, extra reps, extra stress on the body, and we have to account for that. So a lot of the times in these sessions, in the strength sessions, in the training in general, while we do have those high output moments like the speed bench press, like the absolute strength movements like a squat or a deadlift, I really like to kind of pull it back for the accessory work and get super specific with it and make sure that we're building recovery, building resiliency, and working on some of these patterns that we often don't see inside the training. A couple of examples of this, as you can see, is something like a cable face pull, and this specific variation is a higher cable face pull where we're trying to get those hands above the head, which is going to work a little bit more of that lower trap. And then we also have something like a straight arm cable pull down or like a cable lat pull over, depending on what you call it. And that's working something called the serratus, which is also termed as the boxer's muscle, which sits underneath the pec and wraps all the way around the rib cage and really kind of works as a scapula stabilizer to help us move, protract, retract, and kind of gives that scapula a place to sit off of and create stability so that the shoulder can move freely. Now, another thing that's a little bit different about armored MMA as opposed to regular MMA is the rounds are slightly different. Again, I may get this wrong, but we can correct it after. The rounds are 90-second rounds with 90-second rest, right? So they're short bursts of high output, rest, high output, rest. So the conditioning may look slightly different when the time comes for camp and we're getting ready for a fight. But in that off camp, we still want to focus on aerobic capacity, longer bouts of movement, longer bouts of output, increasing our ability to recover and move for long periods of time. Aerobic capacity in any case, in any athlete, helps us, one, improve recovery, improve oxygen intake efficiency, and also helps us just move and get used to breathing and get a lot of reps in and time under tension, right? Like any other movement, the more time we can get under tension or time under breathing, right, the better efficient we can get at breathing, the better we're going to do in these longer bouts. And aerobic capacity is going to be the baseline that sets us up for everything else performance-wise moving forward. One of the things I like to work on with Mickey was not only these longer bouts of aerobic capacity, but trying to be aerobic inside of these shorter intervals as well. Gonna 5, 3, 2, 1, and so as you can see, as Mickey finishes up here, we got through another grueling session. Today was the aerobic session, so we worked on a couple different specific things, worked a little bit through mobility, worked a little bit through, like I said, the plyometrics and whatnot, And then we just got into this nice aerobic piece with this bike and the skier. Take the shirt off. It's too hot down here.
Too fucking hot in Florida, man.
Florida. Montana for life.
That's right, MT, buddy.
So if you guys haven't checked out Mickey yet, check him out. I'll put his Instagram in the video. I'll also put the Armored MMA Instagram in the video. This is one of the most exciting sports I've seen yet, and he's doing a great thing building this in Nashville. So if you got the time and you're interested, definitely check it out. Hit him up. Let him know you watched the video. Cheer him on whenever his next fight is. And definitely pay attention to Armored MMA in the coming months. This was Behind the Session. Today, we were looking at Mickey Gallus, Armored MMA fighter and pioneer of Armored MMA. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.